PlayStation's strategy of acquisition is somehow more noble than Xbox's. Give me a break. Stay with me. So we've all heard about the acquisition of Housemarque and Bluepoint Games, and Herman Hulst talking about the idea that Sony doesn't just throw money around. They want to particularly focus in on relationships that they've had over time and then purchase those studios where it makes sense. And that is the strategy of PlayStation. Microsoft has their own strategy. But after all of this news was released, I'm seeing countless videos of people claiming that somehow Sony's strategy is the noble strategy. They're not just money-hatting people. They're not just going out there and just buying things to buy them. Sony is just so much more noble and so much more good. And give me a break. Now, this isn't an Xbox defense video or a PlayStation defense video. This is a video from somebody who is actually able to be objective, actually able to step outside of themselves and their own personal bias when it comes to games and gaming, and just call bullshit when they see it. So, the relationship that Bethesda has had with Microsoft is not one born out of money. It's one born out of the same amount of time, the same amount of years of engagement that Housemarque and Bluepoint and Insomniac have had with PlayStation. In fact, Pete Hines and Todd Howard have said so in interviews. They've done an interview where they said it's about trust and relationship over time. And in this roundtable, he said specifically,
when that game launched, the litany of issues we had, and we let a lot of people down. And, well, there was very little we didn't screw up, honestly. And one of the people that I called was Phil. And I said, hey, there's so many things we're dealing with. What advice do you have? And he put me in touch with some people at Xbox who were able to look at all of the games in the system and what was important and what wasn't important to the other games that made it for the long haul. And that kind of advice really, really helped us. And now, seeing 76 be one of the most played games on Xbox, we're just, incredibly fortunate to be there.
The position that Sony was in with some of these companies was different than the position Microsoft was in. Microsoft has never been the market leader. They've never had the most systems sold out there to the consumer base. So the relationship that Sony had with, say, Insomniac or Sucker Punch or any of the number of third-party developers who were making exclusive content over the years for PlayStation is different, because Microsoft has not been able to get those exclusive games because they haven't had the most consoles sold in quite some time. But that doesn't mean that they didn't have their own relationships behind the scenes that were built out of the same amount of trust that Sony had with the aforementioned studios. And that is how these deals are created. It's not like if you have a lot of money, everything and anything is for sale. Just because you've got $8 billion doesn't mean Bethesda has to say yes. So there's a lot more than just saying, here's some cash, come on in, and somehow we don't have the same relationships, we don't have the same trust, and you don't have the same relationship and trust in us that these other studios that PlayStation purchased have in PlayStation. It's absolutely ridiculous to claim that one strategy is somehow the noble strategy and Microsoft's is somehow the evil strategy, because every studio has different relationships with every publisher. And again, if you look at somebody like Double Fine, who was purchased by Microsoft recently, it's the same thing over time. They have a history of those adventure games on PC working with Microsoft. So, yes, having a lot of money is a great thing. Yes, more avenues are open to you. But if you don't think that Sony would make that deal if they had $8 billion to throw around, then you're insane, because anybody would have when it came to Bethesda. And again, Pete Hines, Todd Howard talked about this in the past, and most recently on this roundtable, the same relationships that Insomniac had with PlayStation. And again, stay with me here. The reason that Insomniac made games exclusively for the PlayStation hardware is because more people purchased PlayStation. It is important to sell a console to the largest base possible because you almost guarantee yourself those relationships. Insomniac didn't have a fear of having an exclusive on PlayStation because people were buying PlayStations and people were buying software, and their games were selling a whole hell of a lot of copies. And again, that doesn't mean that that's the only reason they were there. They also had that relationship with Sony. There was trust built up over the years, and an acquisition seemed feasible and logical. But that same idea applies to Microsoft with Bethesda. Again, if Xbox had all of those consoles sold out there, the same amount that PlayStation had over the years, they would have those relationships and that exclusive third-party game as well, and that relationship would foster into an acquisition. But instead, a different avenue with Bethesda and some other studios. A different avenue, but still the same trust over the years that led to acquisition talks and fits that just seem right. So the idea that somehow Sony's strategy is noble and Microsoft is evil, again, I don't buy it. And I'm not a person who wants to defend Microsoft in any way. I don't care about anything Microsoft other than Xbox. But this is just a ridiculous argument, and one that is born out of just fanaticism and telling people what they want to hear in order to keep the subscriber base happy and maybe gain a few more. Let me know what you think in the comment section about this nonsense. Think about liking and subscribing and sharing out on your favorite social media platform of choice, and I'll see you in the next video.